You are listening to Sober Motivation Radio. All right, guys, good evening. We're here for the 5th episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. And I've got a fantastic topic to talk about with you guys today. So today's topic is going to be about sobriety and the compounding interest of sobriety. So something that I've come to think about, and I was watching somebody's webinar today, and they were talking about compound interest and how when you first start something, at first it's not the best thing to be dealing with. Obviously, nothing starts out perfect, but it's over time where that thing that you're working on gets better and better and better, and the more you've worked on it and the more you put effort into it and just let it grow on its own, much like an investment, its value grows over time. So that was what I thought was an interesting thought with compounding interest and relating it to sobriety. So I think that your health is a great investment always to invest in. So anytime you're working out, eating good food, that pays off later on throughout your life, basically. So if you're in the process of your day, you'll notice a difference between when you're being healthy and unhealthy. And so the same thing with sobriety. When you're dealing with being sober at first, it's going to feel horrible because your body is so used to the dopamine effects that you get from drinking constantly. So when you cut out that drinking and you're left to be basically just yourself, you find that it sucks, and it does suck. And I definitely remember just wanting to jump back into drinking and to fuel my soul with drinking like I always did. But after being sober for as long as I have to definitely say that it is a compound effect that you get over time. And so to add to this idea, I also brought up a book that I will go over with some topics that I will be relating to this idea. This book is called The Compound Effect, and this book is from Darren Hardy. Also, I would like to give a shout out to the people who have subscribed to this channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. And I also have an announcement to make in regards to my ebook that I have dropped onto sobermotivation.com. It is free of charge so that you guys can have literature to read and understand about addiction and have some tools that you guys can use to build for yourself. On top of that announcement, I have another announcement regarding the Sober Motivation store. So I received my first Sober Motivation SnapBack, and I have to say that the product quality is fantastic. The sober portion on the SnapBack is completely threaded, and it looks awesome, and I love it. And you can get it in 3 different colors. You can get it in black and white, you can get it in pink and black, and you can get it in red and white. And if you guys have any suggestions with colors, I can add those into them as well. And another shout out that I want to give out to somebody for helping me come up with this topic to talk about, even though it was more indirectly inspired from what he was talking about. I have to give a shout out to Blake Newbar, who is launching his Facebook group called Freedom Fighters, your launch to a $1 million sales funnel. And he goes through on how to set up a sales page and offer a course if you guys have something you're interested in selling. So thank you to you, Blake, for the inspiration behind this podcast with the compounding interest idea. So I really wanted to make that today's topic about how the compounding interest of sobriety builds up over time. So, as I was saying for myself, I found that over time, my sobriety has become extremely important. And I almost couldn't understand why, when people asked me this in AA, how important is sobriety to you? And I always thought it was a funny question that people were asking that. And I was almost put off by it. And I would sometimes give them the answer just to see what the response was. And they say, well, sobriety should be like your life depends on it. And at this point, I finally get it. So that's the whole reason why I've been able to launch this podcast, been able to get a website going, been able to get a YouTube channel ingrained with it, because I work nonstop because I understand how my life depends on staying sober. Because the issue that I have is that as soon as I start drinking, all of this content that I've been able to make, the apparel that I have the ability to offer you guys that looks fantastic in my opinion, also goes down the drain. All of it goes down the drain as soon as I start drinking again. And I realized it today, and probably now more than ever, how much effort that I actually need to be putting into myself to stay on the path of success that I've finally seen for myself. So, as I was saying, I was going to go over the points of this book called The Compound Effect with Darren Hardy. So, the first point that this brings up is it talks about learning how to take control of your life, reach your goals, and push past your limits. And that, in my opinion, is the first step for sobriety. You have to take control of your life, because without the control of your own life, you are probably lost, my friends. And so that's one of the first things I honestly want you guys to do also. And I'm actually going to add into that point something that I've been looking at adding into the Sober Motivation website and the products is that I want to offer some courses to you guys so that you guys can use them as tools for yourselves to work on other things, so that way you guys can work for yourselves. And I think that's an issue that I found for myself as well, with being an employee all the time. You're working for somebody else and you don't have control of your life ultimately. So you have to figure out what you have to do to take control of your life to reach the goals that you want and push past your limits. So there's a course that I have coming up pretty soon. I'll give some more detail about it probably in the next week. But it's just one bit that you guys can use. I'm also looking at adding in a podcast setup that you guys can look at picking up also if you guys are interested in starting your own podcast, because I'm starting to notice that as I've been reaching out into my community, there's quite a bit of people that are actually interested in what I'm talking about. So one of the goals also that I'm looking at providing to you guys is a means of providing your voice to this situation that we've dealt with as well. So I'll link the podcast equipment that I've used for myself to get set up and start recording. As far as all of the software and whatnot that I've used to start specifically working on it, and how I've been able to get this podcast up to different channels, I would have to refer you guys to Ryan Helms with the 21-day podcast launch course that I took from him from Legacy Podcasting. It is a fantastic course. Like I said before, it's amazing. It's given me so much ability to cut through all the BS, basically just take a knife through butter and cut through it all and get directly to the points that I want to make with you guys in these podcasts. So, as I was saying before, take control of your life and reach your goals, and then push past your limits. And I found also pushing past my limits has come to this idea where I've been so self-serving in that it's limited me quite a bit. So before, my previous goals were to get a raise or make more money or make as much money as I possibly can, but that's a limit. There's only so much money in the world, and I get that the government's always able to print it and make more of it, but that to me is still a limit. My idea of pushing past my limits is to get past that idea that when you see, say, for instance, Instagram, and you see models and influencers who are promoting themselves through materialistic means, I think that for us to grow and for myself to grow, that I need to get past that point, because a lot of it is a facade. And I'm sure most of you realize you can put whatever you want on Instagram and on Facebook. You can push your brand to get more likes easily if you know how to set up ads, if you know how to set up likes. And the other thing too is figuring out the stories behind how they're actually doing that. So if, for instance, you see an Instagram model on Instagram and she's hanging around with a $25,000 purse and she's in front of a really nice car, I actually did some research on this. I don't remember why I was looking it up, but somebody was bringing up the idea that Instagram models that you see have no real way of paying for that type of stuff with just Instagram sponsorships. So most of you probably understand that after a certain point, after you get a certain amount of followers, that people will reach out to you, companies will reach out to you to pay you to push their product or brand also. But from what I was understanding from the article that I was reading, it was talking about how some of these Instagram models are a part of sex rings, and the idea of integrity and dignity behind that is diminished. So I think the idea that you're pushing past the materialistic limits and going deep within to your own soul to understand yourself and the world around you is where things just change. Your brain changes, and it's quite a different spiritual feeling. So I think that is an extremely important thing to think about with your goals. Don't just shoot for materialistic things. Think about things that change who you are as a person for real. So the next topic in this book is immediate results are less rewarding than steady improvements. So I can actually agree with that as well. So for instance, I have a Instagram account that I've been using, and something that I have learned is that you can promote on Instagram easily. There's an app that I actually have on my phone. It's called Get Meters Likes. So if Magic Likes Meter is the name of the app. So you can go into Apple, download this app, and you basically trade likes for likes, or you can purchase likes for anywhere between $2 to $50, and you purchase likes for your photos. And it's an interesting thought to me, because for some people, and I think this is for myself as well, when I go on social media and I'm looking at different things that are posted and I see how some people have a crazy amount of attention, that it sort of makes you feel bad because you're comparing yourself to that, but you don't really understand what's behind that or why you're feeling that sort of way. And wouldn't it be funny that there and it's not really funny, but isn't it funny to think about the idea that people are getting super depressed over the lack of attention that their social media might be getting, or they themselves are not getting, and it's creating depression in their lives when there's shortcuts to it. And if you really need the social validation, you can easily go get it. So I found that was an important thought for me to come across. And I found that the steady improvement that's made over time is way more rewarding. So, for instance, when I started out with building Sober Motivation, the name was Speak Motivation. And I had to dig in, think, and ask and research what would actually work for me. And then I finally came to Sober Motivation. And I think that it's an intense way for me to see it because, yes, it was only, say, maybe 2 months ago where I started this YouTube channel, started trying to get some sort of branding going. But over time, to see where I've made it so far to Sober Motivation as the brand, and then to be able to take this brand and not be ashamed of putting my name on the idea of this brand, for me, is fantastic. And it's so awesome that I can actually take this idea and go to different people. So, for instance, I've been actively working on building the YouTube channel because I need more subscribers, which if you're listening and you haven't already subscribed, please do so to the YouTube channel. Or if you guys are following this on any of the other platforms that this is getting posted to, like it there, review it there, give me some feedback. I love constructive feedback. That's a part of steady improvement. But like I was saying, the idea that it went from Speak Motivation, which I thought was a funny name anyways, it just sounded weird. I'm not a motivational speaker by any means. I'm not Eric Thomas. I'm not Les Brown. I know that. So to get it to this point and to have that name and to be able to put my face on it or my voice behind this brand and to be proud of being able to go to my friends or other people that are in my social circle and ask them to follow the YouTube channel or to give me feedback on it and not have to worry about what the negativity could be is definitely been far more rewarding than the one Facebook or Instagram post that I've made that made, say, 1,000 likes that I pushed anyways, because that's an immediate result that I felt as though I needed, versus the steady improvement over time of just building this brand has definitely been far more rewarding. I mean, just for instance, getting the Sober Motivation SnapBack in the mail and to see it and to hold it and to see the thread in it, it looks great in person. I'm telling you guys, if you guys want a nice looking snapback, pick up the Sober snapback on sobermotivation.com. Or there's also bracelets that are being offered, other apparel that's being offered. It looks great, but to see that finally in my hands and to realize it's a real thing in my hands is awesome. And I built it. I sat there working on it and putting the website together and putting the content in it and just going over it constantly is crazy. So the next point that this book, Compounding Effect, goes into is transform your goals into daily habits. And I think that is important. So I am actually in a sobriety Facebook group, and I posted a question that some of you guys may have come across on my Facebook, or if you guys have came across the question from around the different social media posts where I've been posting. And I've asked, how are you guys dealing with the struggle of motivation and sobriety? And I had a poster, another person comment on that particular question. And he posted a picture that says, and I know it goes against what my brand's name is, so I have to disagree with the first part, but it says, fuck motivation, it's fickle and unreliable, and isn't worth your time. Better to cultivate habits and rely on motivation. Force yourself to do things. Force yourself to get out of bed and practice. Force yourself to work. Motivation is fleeting and easy to rely on because it requires no concentrated effort to get motivation. Motivation comes to you. You don't even have to chase after it. Habits are reliable. Motivation is fleeting. But so I'm going to put my argument to that, and I believe that habits are fleeting and motivation is fleeting. They're both fleeting, so I think that they both actually work. They work in sync. They work together. So that's where this point where transforming your life goals into daily habits is important. So I do believe that habits are extremely important. So to figure out, so for instance, somebody was saying that their drinking is basically a habit. And so you have to figure out how to transform that habit. And one point that actually has helped me is that I know for a fact that when I was drinking, that the habit or the feeling of feeling a cold iced beverage was refreshing. And I know after the first couple of sips, I felt refreshed. But that feeling goes away after a few drinks. You know how you're going to feel like crap. So something that I've done with daily habits to combat that effect is, for instance, instead of going to the store and buying a cold case of beer, I buy a cold Monster. So I'm a huge fan of the new Paradise Monster flavor that they came out with. 0 sugar, 0 carbs, super healthy. But I have a cold beverage still in my hands, but it's not alcoholic. It's not that nasty substance that basically transforms you from Jekyll and Hyde and turns you into the monster you know that chemical is going to turn you into. So, like I said, I don't reach for a cold beer. I reach for a cold energy drink instead, where I understand the caffeine still has the dangers and risk to reward ratio involved with it, but not the way that drinking, and especially the way that I was drinking, which I can never go back to, does. And another thing too with daily habits, if say for instance you're trying to figure out how to steer away from that disgusting habit, I think something that has helped me is that every human is a habitual creature. Every human wants a routine, and it even says it in the next point of the Compound Effect book. It says, create a routine to keep your moment going. So I think that transforming your habits, even if it's just enough to get you away from that self-destructive habit, works. So for me, for instance, podcasting, working on this podcast as much as I can works. And I'm not stuck in a negative routine where there's nothing being done. And I know I'm not just going to work and waiting until the moment where I can leave. It's I'm going to work, I'm keeping thoughts in my head on paper, or I'm keeping a notebook in my pocket to write down and talk about. So even if, for instance, I have a supervisor who screams at me and I get angry, I have to think about, for one, changing that habit that would normally be a trigger for me to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm angry, I can't wait to get out of work, I can't wait to go to the store and buy a drink. I have to change that idea. I have to take that focus of what I'm going to do that's going to be self-destructive and take that focus and point it to where it's not going to be negative on my life. So for me, something that I'll do is, instead of as soon as I leave work, I'm going to go get a drink. As soon as I leave work, I'm going to go work on my podcast. I'm going to go write about why I'm so angry at a supervisor yelling at me over something that I don't feel is necessary. So I think just by changing something that could be destructive, that points you into a self-destructing behavior, figure out how to just grab that negativity and think of where you can put it to where it would be a positive, constructive thing for yourself, even if it is writing a diary, or if it's going for a walk or going to the gym, or you go get some food somewhere. If you go grab a bite to eat at, say, McDonald's, and I don't want to promote unhealthy eating, but I honestly think that even going to McDonald's and getting a burger, or going to Starbucks and getting a coffee and releasing your pent-up anger that way is far more beneficial to you than to resort to the thing that you know is going to harm you overall. And that is another idea that I think I want to apply to this particular talk, is that you're drinking poison basically in expecting to harm the other person. And that was something that I had personally dealt with, where I felt as though, well, I'm going to ruin my life. That'll show them, but it's only going to show you. And in reality, most people don't care if you do that. The only person that's ever going to care about you ruining your life truly is going to be you, because in the end, you're the one who has to pay for it. And I have to say this as well. You have to love yourself. You have to love yourself as if your life depends on it. Similar to that thought, and I feel like I'm really talking to myself right now. I have to love myself. I have to do these things because my life depends on it. And I was talking to somebody who, thank you for your support and subscribing, was asking me how I was able to stay sober for this long. And I told him that I'm busy, like my life depends on it, because it does. It truly depends on staying extremely busy, working on things that have long-term positive effects for other people, which can keep me working constantly. And I love it. I just love when I'm working on something that has a bright future. And I think also that is something that is helpful too. And this is where it goes into the final point. It says, embrace obstacles to accelerate your path to success. And I feel as though that is a very good point, because the obstacles that I've had to face with, for instance, building a YouTube channel, building a Facebook channel, building an Instagram channel, there's a ton of obstacles. There's more than I actually like to think about, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it because there's so much of a process that's involved in being in that process, where the overall outcome doesn't matter to me. It's when I'm in the process of building and learning about something and putting it together and showing the idea that I've created essentially out of nothing and presenting it to somebody else, where they can see the idea and they can say, oh yeah, I get it. I get that idea that you're building. And so I think that's important to think about, where when you're facing obstacles, don't feel as though it's a bad thing. I mean, even for instance, where I'm facing negativity from people who might say something completely horrible to me and I can't say anything back, and I know I can't. That, to me, is a solid obstacle to climb over or to deal with, because I have no other choice. You're not going to have any other choice. You're either going to figure out how to get over the obstacle that's in front of you, or it's going to destroy you. So that's where it comes to the final summary of this book. Again, this is off the Blinkist app, which I'll leave the affiliate link, because I do have an affiliate link with them. And even if you guys don't sign up for the subscription, the $15 or $45, $50 a year subscription, even if you guys just sign up for the email, it helps me out with the ability to run this podcast. So if you guys can just subscribe with an email to the Blinkist affiliate link, it's appreciated tenfold. And I can tell you for sure that the value of Blinkist is, like I've said earlier, extremely valuable. So the final point where the compound effect comes to an end, it says, it finalizes with a summary about the book. It says, the keys to success are realizing that you're responsible for your life, forming healthy daily habits, cultivating discipline, and pushing past your comfort zone. Getting to your goals at lightning speed can sometimes be detrimental and, if often not possible. Instead, steady progress and patience will get you to where you really want to be. And I agree with that, because steady progress in your sobriety and patience with being sober is what will get you to where you want to be. And I feel as though I'm almost the living proof of this, where I remember going to these AA meetings and I'd hear these speakers at the end of their speeches, and it's almost like a script. I feel as though somebody has written for them to say, hey, say this to them. Your life changes profoundly, or they say the changes of my life where I can't even explain, or I can't figure out and imagine how it would change this much, is where I feel as though I'm at with getting this launched, getting this worked on, getting a podcast fully completed is crazy to me, but getting it actually done has been amazing. And so that's where I feel as though the compounding interest of sobriety really takes place and really shines on that idea. And so the last part of the summary, it leaves you with the actionable advice, which is why I said to you guys, Blinkist is such a great app. Every book that you read, it gives you the actionable advice from that book to apply to your own life, which is, for me, amazing, because I love to read, but I could spend an eternity just reading and not getting anything done. So to get the actionable advice at the end of it is extraordinary. But this says, prove you're the boss. To prove to yourself that you're really in control of your behavior and decisions for 30 days, abstain from smoking, quit drinking your favorite wine, or eat one healthy meal per day. Completing this goal will help convince you that you really are the boss of your own life. And you are the boss of your own life, and that's a fact. You can't change the idea that somebody else controls you. You can be the only person that's in control of yourself, and you have to control your life. So I think figuring out how to work for yourself, and that's why I said I'm going to drop the podcast equipment that I think if you guys are interested in picking up and trying to put a podcast together for yourself is a good idea. And the other thing is the courses that I'm looking at launching. So if you guys are interested in trying to start a online business or an online course of some sort, that you guys can work on that as well. So there you have it. That is the 5th episode. Please like and subscribe to this video, leave a review, and also check out the Sober Motivation store, sobermotivation.com. I have apparel up, I have the ebook up, I have another ebook actually on its way as well, which should give you guys more tools to work on the things that you want to work on in your life, particularly if it's dealing with addiction, but it'll also give you more tools to use so that you can go do those things, because that's what I want. I want to not only help myself with this whole project, but I want other people to get the help that they need, because I hate watching people just suffering with this nasty disease, this disgusting thing that's just ruined people. As I've said, people who have overdosed or are still struggling with drug addictions, or people who are struggling with alcoholism, people who have lost their lives to it, either between just losing everything from self-destructive behavior or because of accidents or other disgusting things that have happened. I'm I'm trying to work on that problem, and I'm so inspired to work on this, and I hope you guys get the inspiration to work on this as well. And I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm enjoying this, and I will tag out of here, and I will see you guys all soon on the next Sober Motivation podcast. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sober Motivation Radio. If you're not subscribed already, please be sure to do that right now. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could do me a quick favor and rate and review the podcast. This lets the platform know that I'm doing something right and people like the content. It would be a huge help, and I would be grateful. Be sure to head over to sobermotivation.com and pick up the Sober Motivation ebook. This book will teach you about sobriety, motivation, maintaining sobriety, and motivation. Also, what would be some of the key things that you can do afterwards when becoming sober so that you can maintain the positive attitude to stay motivated and sober. Until next time, stay sober and stay motivated.